The background material in this video can be viewed at thewaythetruithandthelife.net. More specific references will be given in the notes. It is Monday, January 7th, 2013. I'm in my Florida condominium, and Olga stayed in Russia to care for our 3.5-year-old granddaughter, Darina. I am working on editing the introduction to the website, going back to the shocking experiences I had when I first went to Russia and met Olga and got married. The shocking experiences were people being murdered by suicide bombers. And in the video I have of the wedding, there's nothing about that, but we had to be in Moscow a month before the wedding to sign, and then come back a month later before, and then be married. There's a month waiting period. And while we were there, initially we blew up a subway, murdering a whole bunch of people. It was terrible. And when we got married, I'll show you a picture of that horrible scene. But then when we went back in a month and got married, we had to walk through we can walk down under the street to the subway and up on the other side of the street. Big halls underneath. That's common in Russia, to have these walkways underneath the main highways in the cities, in the big cities. At any rate, when after our wedding, we walked through the subway underground with Olga's cousin Ludmila, who had been with us as a witness for the wedding and a helper. But we were unable to take pictures at that scene. That was forbidden. There were pictures of the people who were murdered there, but that they weren't allowing, for some respect for the people. But we did take a picture of the background where many of the people had been killed. You could still see the stains from that were hard to clean up in the concrete. So that's my introduction to our wedding, and then it will show the wedding and show afterwards. Actually, the wedding itself was very nice. Just the unbelievable wake up for me. I had no comprehension of that people could murder themselves and others, and even sacrifice children to their God by strapping explosives on them. And I just, I've really been reacting to this reality since then to try and make an understanding and fit it into my picture of the totality of life and the meaning of life, these things. That at any rate, after this, we did have a very nice meal in a very nice restaurant. Olga was so glad to be able to come to America. She felt such a joy because she had lived in Armenia with the horror, and then they moved to back to Russia. Her forefathers had left Russia in the 1700s when they were being persecuted for being home Christians. That they were had gone to Persia, and then from Persia to Armenia. And after the breakup of the Soviet Union, the Armenians were not being nice to the Russian villagers. So Olga, and then moved back to the Caucasus, and there terrorism all over. So when she came to America, she was so thankful to be in a safe place. And then the following year, 9/11, and now with this, seeing Muslims stoning Christians at Dearborn, Michigan, and seeing the Muslims demonstrate here in Florida with their hate and send the Jews back to the ovens and this kind of thing. Just an unbelievable world that without Jehovah God, without the love of Christ. So, at any rate, that's my introduction, and I'll show you the wedding.
You have to put some signature over there. Скажите, пожалуйста, вы могли бы апостиль поставить печать нам нужно для легализации? Сказали, что будет
Если ваша надо. Сегодняшний день мы уже занимаемся вечером совместного дня, это вас поздравляю, пожалуйста.
I made the video last night and saved it to the computer, and this morning, before loading it to YouTube, I called Olga in Russia and told her about it, and she said not to show her or Ludmila's picture. And the reason is there, just in our apartment complex, there was a young woman grabbed and ended up in, the founder, it was actually a couple years later, she was in one of the neighboring Russian states, where in the Stavropol Krai region, but as Islamic terror all over, and I feel sad for the Muslims. They've been killing peaceful imams. It's the ones going by the strictly by the Koran and following Mohammed's example. And along with following Mohammed's example, those who do, they're taught, brainwashed as little children to respect him. He married a 6-year-old and had sex with her when she was 9. There's some Islamic literature having to do with his sexual activity with her before he had penetration, but this is the model. And so for just in all Islamic areas, young women have a problem, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, especially if they're non-Muslim. Just like in Spain, the Christians had to give virgins to be taken to the harems every year, and they don't even count as wives. They're concubines of some nature, but they can be used as sex slaves. And that happens today, not just in Russia, but in Russia. And a young girl, are being taken, young girls are being taken. There's a culture of stealing your bride, but the lack of respect for women. And I'm particularly distressed now because of the insight that I've gained through the knowledge that hunter-gatherer tribes for millions of years, their strong genetics came from the men, up to 60% of them dying violently, and the major source of violence was attacking the next tribe, killing the men and taking the young women. So for millions of years that left a genetic marker. In the lower apes, before the tree of knowledge, that is before the logic of cause-effect relationship, a chimpanzee doesn't associate the child with the rape that impregnated her. She breastfeeds it till it's equivalent of 5 or 6 years old, and they don't kill their babies. Women do, because they have the development of the logic to associate, and words, language to associate the cause-effect relationship, and it's now knowledge that the man is the cause of the baby. So the genetic resentment of all the millions of years of violence that has left a genetic marker are associated with the baby as well as with men. And this is a terrible problem. And men have the problem of the genetic marker of aggression to kill men and take women. And this is, on one side is Islamofascism, the male-dominated, where that the genetic and carried over into modern times, it's an insanity that isn't a product of reason. The same as the women's hate for men and killing their babies and not wanting to be mammalian caregiving mothers and breastfeed to give the children what they need, causing all this autism, and then you destroy your political and professional reputation if you say the truth about the cause of autism. A judge give away millions of dollars of money from the drug companies to parents who caused autism. Not that they have any choice. They were raised in daycare and don't have the ability to give that mammalian bond to their child. But the judge give our money that we pay for our medicine and goes into a fund in case the medicine does damage. The judge give that money away to the parents of autistic children. And then it's proven that that's false. It's not the mercury, but and it never was proven true. It's just, but they'll find another excuse. At any rate, coming back to this, the reality, it's harsh. Nobody wants to wake up. The Muslims are more victims than anybody else. But Olga's afraid to have her picture shown. So she says, take mine and Ludmila's picture off. And all I thought was about the introduction. I had taken a photo shot of us before and during and after the wedding. And I went to whiten those out, and then I realized the whole video has Olga's picture in it. But that was years ago. They wouldn't recognize her. So I called Olga back in Russia just a few minutes ago. And she says, well, they're actually killing people here every day. And I know that. It's a large, they'll kill judges and police and peaceful imams and airplanes and the airport we fly into, all that, and some minibuses. I've gone into these things. I lent my brother-in-law money to buy a bus to take people from Minvadi to Elbrus. That's the highest mountain in Europe, and the Muslims killed a bunch of people in a minibus and blew up the ski lift at Elbrus to stop the Western world from coming into the Caucasus, which was Western world before the Islamic invasions. These people are victims. At any rate, I called Olga back and I said, we've got to be willing to suffer for the spirit of truth. I don't want to be like my brothers with their head in the sand in Pennsylvania until it's too late. And I just got through watching the last week, discovered the video of the Dearborn, Michigan Arab festival. The young people, while their parents stood there stoning and throwing garbage at the Christians, and the police make the Christians, the bad person, they have to get out. They have to get off the street. There's no protection. They're sitting there where the stone hit them, all bleeding, but there's no prosecution of the crime. And Obama has all their support. Well, he's not helping humanity. He's not helping the spirit of truth. He's not rescuing the poor women from this male-dominated culture. He's setting up the socialist system, like communism, which is built on women's liberation. So he's playing both ends against the middle, and in the middle is where there's sanity. It isn't the genetic male domination to go grab the female. And by the way, that God's laws, that was what survived. Because if you intermarry, you have genetic weakness and disability, like the Queen's sister that's in some hospital somewhere because of her genetic degeneration. The royalty in Europe had a big problem with that. Too much inbreeding. So the tribes that went and killed, the men went and killed the men from the other tribe and took their women, had stronger genetics. So by God's law of survival, what survives propagates. What propagates survives. It's just natural laws, like God's laws of electricity. Don't stick your finger in the socket. Or God's laws of gravity. Don't jump off a 5-story building. God will kill you. Well, the same thing there. Then that was what, by God's laws, survived to make us, that we're intelligent enough to try and save intelligence in reality before the Earth, which is an unstable system, is hit by some asteroid and intelligence goes back to the dust again. We are, like Paul said, in God we live and move and have our being. There's nothing outside of God. We're made out of God's dirt. And if we're going to serve God to make it a better world, it's not going to be responding to the genetics that got us to this point, of the women manipulating the men because that's all they had. They were overpowered and they had to go along. Another place I already said how the young girls always go for the invader. It's genetic. It was the ones who accepted the invader and went along to get along and manipulated the priest and chief against the men that were dominating her that survived. The women who would stand up against the evil were killed, so they didn't propagate. That was the time, and that was the situation. Now we're breeding genetic weakness and caring for the poor genetic weak ones and giving all kinds of money, while we're in Russia, more abortions than live births. They're murdering the healthy children. There's an insanity here. On one side, the insanity is the leftover of the genetics in the women, and on the other side is the leftover of the genetics in the men. And in between was a culture in Northern Europe that built on logic, the logic of working together, which came from men. The man's brain is different than the woman's. The man has two different ways of thinking. One side is logical, the other side is pattern nonverbal. That's why, and for a woman, it's more like a chimpanzee. Both sides do both things. Although a chimpanzee doesn't have the logic. But that's why a woman can have a stroke, and she has speech ability in both hemispheres of the cerebrum. So both halves of the brain. So there's a greater likelihood she'll be able to talk some, even with a stroke. Men suffer more because the brain specialization. They don't have the duplication. That's a reality. And we need to deal with reality to help. We are part of God. We are the intelligence. If we just go by the genetic, mechanical laws that brought us this far, we're not going to make it far enough. And what we need to do is learn how to raise children with the ability to love themselves and love others like themselves, not generating this hate, this class struggle. Germany has had products respected all over the world because they had integrity and quality control. They could trust the people who were making things, that were working for you, who were designing things for you. Germany had a law that the mothers had to stay in the home until the child went to school at 6 years old. Up until last year, the women's liberation managed to destroy that, and the way they did it was managed to do away with the idea of marriage to have children, and there were so many women with single children that the government was providing daycare for, that the married women and women's liberation got the power to do away with the law that a mother needs to stay with her child. So you wait another couple generations, and the quality control and the ability to trust a German will be as bad as it is to trust something made in Greece or Spain or Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, if you're not a Muslim, and their two largest cities there, Medina and Mecca, it's a murder. It's the death penalty if you go there if you're not a Muslim. And they just arrested a bunch of people for having a Christmas party. And a woman over here was going to go there with a telephone company, and she was told she couldn't take her Bible. And that she had to have a man with her when she was outside, and she couldn't drive a car. There's a lot of insanity in this world which is genetically founded. On one side, the male stuff. On the other side, the female stuff. The young women are attracted to the invader because that's what survived. Not because they're good or bad. And it's through love and caring, the maternal nursing bond and the paternal bond. Again, going back to the Norse where the logic developed, it came from hunting the woolly mammoth. That's where they developed the large boats to carry a couple tons of meat, and they had to work together as a team. And it also had to do with making war. Those who could hunt together could make war together. That's why the Vikings, even when the Muslims dominated Spain for 700 years, they couldn't overtake the Viking settlements in Portugal and Spain, because the men worked together, a culture of integrity. And they only had one wife. And the wives loved and respected their husbands enough, they usually threw themselves on the funeral fire to join their husband. That was a culture. That was a learned thing. Because children were cared for. And men had built a culture, not genetic, it was educational, with the elders teaching, just like the wisdom in China that used to exist with respect for the elders. Well, at any rate, I called Olga back, and I told her, she says, well, it makes her afraid because they're killing people there. And these young women being taken and raped and some stolen, they still steal brides. And the idea that some end up sex slaves, young girls, stolen, turned into sex slaves. It hurts. And Olga's deathly afraid for her 3.5-year-old granddaughter, and so am I. And yet the young women are attracted to the invader. So you've got young women converting to Islam. And it is the Muslims who suffer more. Anyway, not going to solve all the world's problems in a day, but I reached understanding with Olga. She was going to suffer with me. That I go ahead and put the video up on YouTube. So I'm going to do it. I hope that you are willing, especially if you were raised Muslim and indoctrinated, say the truth. Don't accept the hatred and resentment. Yes, there are bad people. Well, that's very... don't get me wrong. For true rapists that you can identify by the DNA or camera or 3 witnesses, 2 or 3 witnesses, then I would accept the death penalty. There's no reason to keep these people who aren't able to be healthy human beings, no reason to keep them alive in prison or let them out like they did the sex offender here in Florida, and he went and killed an 8-year-old a couple of years ago. You can read stories about that. They were deprived when they were young. They can't help themselves. But hate the sin but love the sinner. That doesn't mean you let him live and go on to do his or her evil. But you don't go around murdering them, and you don't go around depriving them of due process. But the due process has to have an end to it that doesn't make it just a burden on society to destroy it and then release the evil back to corrupt society more. Children need a home with a mother and a father. They need an enculturation. The reason the schools are failing is because the homes have failed. The most important thing is the first 6 months. Look at the children that were rescued from Ceausescu when the communists were overthrown, and he had filled the orphanages with children because he thought population was power, and he made a rule that there were no abortions or birth control. So they were picking up babies all over the street and putting them in orphanages. So all the proof you need that autism comes from the lack of care is there. But nobody wants to hear it because this insanity of women's liberation has taken over. And it's a genetic insanity that's destroying women. Women doctors, women lawyers, they're all over now. Even though many of them got into university by the changing the rules because they couldn't compete. But female doctors have a higher suicide rate. I think it's 3 times the normal rate, twice that of doctors, male doctors. Look into it. Dentists also have a high rate. But the women who don't have their female role in life, the problems with psychiatric problems, with cancer, breast cancer, uterine cancer. I am not trying to degrade people who aren't able to be healthy to achieve those higher potentials of being a good mother or good father, or but first of all, to be a good person, loving yourself. You ever see these babies deprived in the orphanages, beating themselves, and autistic, the worst kinds, always pounding themselves? They can't love themselves. It takes a foundation of that. And then they are able to love others like themselves, so you end up with a bunch of lesbians and male homosexuals. Because that's the level they've developed to. And then you get them that they can develop to want sex with the opposite sex, but they can't care for the babies they make. They haven't developed to the ability of that unselfish love to care for a child, let alone be a good employee or a good member of a community or a good member of government. Now, again, what I've realized is we don't yet have enough knowledge of sociology and psychology to predict things. But the thing what Jesus said, by their fruits you shall know them. We need to have leaders, whether it's military or judicial or legislative or whatever. Our representatives need to be a man and a woman. Those eligible for the office need to be a man and a woman who have raised a healthy family. By their fruits you shall know them. That they love their children and their grandchildren, and the love that they were able to give them, the love that they are able to have a healthy, stable home for their children. Then you have somebody that's able to grow beyond the unselfish love of their own children. When your children go to school and you really love them, you care for the quality of the school. When your children go in the military and you love them, you care for the quality of the military. When your children go to the university and you love them, you care for the quality of the university. When your children go out in the world of work, you care about the quality of the world of work because you love them. We need to choose leaders. The man is the spokesman because of that logical separation, but he is not alone in the office. The man and the woman hold the office. And yes, the woman speak to the woman, the man speak to the man, and the man be the spokesman for the couple. Not that he's the dictator. And if they can't agree, he can say, we can't agree. But we need to build the respect for fathers. We need to build the respect for men and women, but respect the differences in the way God made us. Men have 2 million more brain cells. It's not for nothing. It's because what survived were those that could use logic and fight the enemy or hunt the beast. Millions of years of surviving, and it's left its genetic mark. Yes, there'll be a day, and it's coming soon, when we can understand genetics to the point to make a more perfect body, male or female, and there won't even be any need for sex. But we're not there yet. And to have a sane world, we need to have couples that by their fruits have shown that they're able to care, that they've risen above the influence of the male genetic domination or the genetic female control and through manipulation, and that they work together in a spirit of truth. In God we live and move and have our being. We're either a contributing part in this body of life that hasn't ended for in the order of 1 billion years. We're either part of this living body that is healthy, helping it go on to the next day, the next year, the next generation, or we're a cancer cell that needs to be eliminated for the health of the body. I'm not degrading those people who aren't able to be good parents. It is, they said, how do you be a good parent? You have to choose your parents well. And you don't choose your parents. So how your ability to care for a child, do you have the mammalian? That's not human. That's something that's developed in the brain through the genetic play with experience and nerve growth factor being present in that area of the brain grows in your first 6 months of life, and some of it has to do with growth even in the womb if the mother isn't having a healthy lifestyle. It can harm fetal development and fetal brain development. You know all these things. But where am I going? I think I'm not now, but I'm getting to the point where it's becoming clearer and clearer what we need to do and why we need to do it, and that I can. I don't want to just say it. I want to take the reality and that I've been shown and show it to you. I want you to see it. I want religion to be done away with. It's a personal thing in my home. I'm so thankful for Jesus. He said you don't have to go to the priest. You can go directly to God. Well, we're part of God. We need to go to one another and work together for good. And like Jesus said, it's better I go away. I will send the Spirit of truth that will teach you all things. The Spirit of truth is alive today. Let's use it. We're learning the truths of God's laws, of nuclear energy, of chemistry, of the genetics. We're learning God's laws of child development, of nerve growth factor in the brain. We're learning God's laws of physiology. Oh, let's start respecting the rights of children to be born in with a healthy home, mother and father prepared and able to love that child and care for it, and a mother willing to give it a nursing bond till it gets its second teeth, like a chimpanzee's, and not mock her, because women's liberation And that is a genetic problem. But once you raise if you take a puppy away from its mother too soon, it doesn't know how to be a mother. It is a mammalian thing that has to do with brain development. While nerve growth factor is present at the first few months of birth, and there's a brain or a genetic disease where nerve growth factor stays there. It's high amongst the Jewish, but the children die. The nerve synaptic network just keeps growing until the child dies, around 5 or 6 many times. But all these things are learnable. But what I learned from teaching math for the bad boys, math for the building trades: hate the sin but love the sinner. And you're not, if you're trying to raise a child and correct them, you've got to suffer with them. And the way you suffer with them is spend time with them, going through what they're going through. If you make them sit at the table to eat the healthy food, sit at the table with them. If you make them stay in their room because they were out doing something goofy or dressing goofy or something, stay in the room with them. Or make them sit in the room with you. And yes, I taught math for the bad boys. Most of them had no father. I call the mother to say, your son isn't doing any homework. And she says, what can I do? They can't do anything at the teenage. Either the mother dominates them to turn them into an effeminate puppy dog, or they rebel and go on the street and get their support from other guys on the street. That's healthier than the puppy dog, but it also means to just be part of the group that might have to do violence to others. All right. The whole purpose of this video was motivated by 2 programs I saw on Al Jazeera justifying the Muslims, just like the Islamophobia, degrading being against Islam, and the violence done to Muslims. And some woman pushed a Hindu man in front of a subway in New York. But if you look, and here's all this India as well as the Muslim world, the rape against women. It's not safe for them to go on the street. The male-dominated, one is a caste society male-dominated, and the other is a Islamofascist dominated, and women are raped all over the place. They just went through that with India, killed the young woman in university one, beat her companion unconscious and raped her until she ended up dying in the hospital. The only way we're going to deal with these things is to wake up to reality, not through hatred. Hate the sin, but the sin is in all of us. It was sin that prospered in the sense of the women that went along with the rapist and the invader, and they still want to. Young women are always attracted to the soldiers, whether they're black, white, or yellow, and whether they're black, white, or yellow. It's the invader that they're attracted to. The girls, not the boys. In my high school, we had a problem when they brought the blacks into the suburbs to integrate them. The black boys had all white girlfriends. The white girls were attracted to the black boys, but the white boys weren't attracted to the invading black girls. As though we had a problem when there was a high school dance. Nobody wanted to dance with nobody invited the black girls. They come on their own, and nobody wanted to dance with them. So we tried to help them talking to other nice young men to dance with them, and teachers would dance with them to set an example. These problems are here, and the only thing that's going to overcome them is people that were raised with love. It's predestination. That's why this maternal and paternal mammalian ability to care is so important, because the children have no choice what they're going to become. It's the parents. That's why I say they have to choose their parents well. And how can we solve the problem of having a focus on healthy homes and marriages and child rearing? Put in charge of the government, of the police, of the military, of all positions of authority, not a man, not a woman, a couple, with the man respected as the spokesman for the couple. Not the man in control, but the man's logic, working together with the woman to care, is what raises a healthy family. And it's a cultural thing. The healthy, to not be autistic in that's mammalian, but to not be dominated by the male insanity from genetics, God's laws of what survives, or the female insanity of genetics, like the worldly Christian church is built on the female insanity, worshiping Mary and all these saint worships and things that it was the women used the priests against their husbands, or they set up nunneries where the women could go and not have to bother raising a children or caring for a man, and could be respected. Just like in my home church, we got sister workers going 2 by 2. No, it doesn't make any difference. The Bible says not to suffer women to teach or have authority over men, and women keep silence in the church. No, it doesn't make any difference what the Bible says. Women's liberation takes over wherever the Christian religion gets a foothold. It doesn't invalidate Christ and the Spirit of truth. It's just that's the way it works. They're manipulative because that's what survived. And now they don't need the church. In Europe, the worldly churches are empty. They're being taken over as mosques. Why? The women don't need to use a priest against their husband, or to have a nunnery to go to so they don't have to get married. They can get a job. They can have a baby. They don't need a husband anymore. So they don't get one. And they don't go to church. The churches are empty. As I said, you could roll a bowling ball down the alley and not hit anybody on Sunday. And it's beginning to happen here in America too. My thoughts are destroy no worldly religion. None. It's your personal business and your friends to talk. Yes, read the Bible. Yes, study the different what's good here, what's good there. But to take an example of a man who married a 6-year-old girl and had sex with her when 9 to make him the example, it's a male-dominated theocratic cult, and it's got a lot of victims to it. That's on the male side of insanity. On the female side of insanity, you got worldly Christianity with their nunneries and their liberation theology and the worship of Mary and all these kinds of things. Please, I'm 73. I don't even know if any of my work will survive to help others, but some of you who hear this will survive, and you can pick up and carry the Spirit of truth to make it a better world, that you're not just can't think of the word, non-effect cell in God's body, but you're a contributing cell in God's body, working together with other cells to build a healthy future. And the healthy future is really building better bodies and being able to escape Earth before it's destroyed. It's only a temporary place. But so there's purpose to life beyond life, and that's not quite said right. Life has not stopped. The story of making a female out of a male, that's simple. The first life was single cell animal, single cell like amoebas, and they propagated by dividing. There were no sexes. And then part of that come back and joined to make male and female. So out of the male came the female. And the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the brain development, when they ended up with an ice age that made grasslands in Africa, and some of our ancestors left the trees and went out on the prairies and learned to walk and chase and hunt game and eat the dead stuff. First, they were scavengers first, but they developed the ability to walk and run and hunt, and the logic to do that, the logic to work together, the logic to fight together. And along comes what we call human. But there's a lot of, and that logic stuff, that was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And the snake that tempted Eve was a thing between your legs, mister. There's stories, they have some meaning with people that cared and had some insight, but didn't have all the vocabulary to go into all the scientific details. That's what Jesus said. It's better I go away. I'll send the Spirit of truth. It will teach you all things. The Spirit of truth is true science, not this political garbage with magic creation. God is not creator to destroy. It's everything. Matter, motion, and space. And on my website, thewaythetruthandthelife.net, you can see the classical derivation for universal gravitational law. You don't have to go off in this nonsense just because you didn't understand the Michelson-Morley interferometer experiment, and because Einstein put the 1 over the square root of, or the square root of 1 minus v squared over c squared, he put on the wrong side under mass. It's a coupling factor that goes on the other side of the equation. But these things will all be discovered. But I wonder if life is going to die, or if life will go on. Life has not died. You didn't die when one cell died. Life is multifaceted. You're just one cell in life. And you can contribute to it, or you can take away from it, or you can be of non-effect. Let's hope that we can help the world get away from religion and have a personal relationship with themselves, loving, caring for themselves, with their friends, caring for their friends, with their mate, caring for their mate of the opposite sex, that through that relationship bond, you know, the homosexual relationships, that's normal for people that have only evolved, but there's so much problem with promiscuity and not having a stable home. It's real, statistical. The ability to care for the child you create or adopt, and if you're going to adopt, it should be at birth, so you can make sure that that child has the mammalian bond although there's already weaknesses. The child at birth can distinguish between its mother's voice or another woman. But to go beyond that, to care about the life that follows us, what your children are going to live in, what your grandchildren are going to live in. And that used to be in cultures like the farm culture in China. And that may be why, talk about brain size. Did you know the Orientals have the larger brains? But yet they're discriminated against by women's liberation in the university and minority liberation in the universities and workplaces here in America. And they've got the largest brain capacity on the average. The Caucasian, the Europeans have second, the Africans third. That's just born out of need. And it doesn't mean that this one is more able than that one, and there's no problem. We need to respect those who have demonstrated that they have the ability. By their fruits you shall know them. Not this stupid university stuff that you get a memorization degree and you go out and you can't even know your nose from a bump on the wall. I worked in steel mill, and engineers, graduate engineers used to come out. They were useless. They were a danger for about 4 or 5 years till they actually learned something. Anyway, I'm going to sign off. The purpose of this video was motivated by Al Jazeera claiming how Muslims are just being discriminated against. Muslims are victims of Islam, and to have a man who took whatever women he wanted and had sex with a 9-year-old as your model is unfortunate. And to not understand the genetic insanity of Islamofascism on one side and Christian socialism on the other side, you're out to lunch. Look at reality. Look at your own problems. You've got them. You were born with them. Accept them and use your head to use your being to help protect children's rights to a healthy mammalian home with them, and a healthy human home with a mother and a father that's able to care for them unselfishly. Okay, the background material in this video can be viewed at thewaythetruithandthelife.net. More specific references will be given in the notes.